Welcome into another episode of Home Field Advantage. Hope you're having a great week wherever and however you may be listening to this podcast across our great country or our great land. I'm recording on March 7th, 2026. It's been a couple weeks since we did a pod. Last time I checked in with everybody was the day of the gold medal victory over Canada. Diesel was on. We did Odd Man Rush. It was a great time. Um, you know, I wish I could do content more often. Obviously, it's something I want to do. It's something I like doing. Um, but it's hard. It's hard. But there certainly hasn't been a shortage of stories in the sports world over the last couple weeks. The afterglow or lack thereof, we're not going to go down that road of the men's hockey team. You have spring training, World Baseball Classic, NFL offseason is starting to heat up with some trades. Max Crosby to the Ravens, for instance. Um, NBA last night, Cooper Flag returned to New England and played with the Mavs against the Celtics. The Celtics won 120 to 100. You've got March Madness is starting to heat up a little bit with some conference tournaments. College baseball has been underway. There's a lot going on. Obviously golf, where Masters countdown is less than a month away. It's my one of my favorite sports events of the year. I'm wearing a green jacket just because of that. Just kidding. Um, so we have a lot of good stuff going on. But one of the things I want to do this spring, um, one of the things I want to do is I want to start a series. Of course, we will still talk about the immediate current events in sports when they happen. I'm talking playoffs for the NHL and NBA. I'm talking, NFL draft, Major League Baseball, World Baseball Classic continuation, March Madness. We're going to talk about all that as often as I can, of course. But what I want to do is instead of just regurgitating the current events of the day, I want to tackle an issue facing sports fans. And when I started Sportland in 2021, and when I started Home Field Advantage in 2019, and I merged the two, and really when I started Sportland and we did the pods and we did the merch and we're doing Odd Man Rush and I'm writing as often as I can when I feel compelled, is because I think fans are losing a voice in sports. I think fans have um, lost their voice. I think we are living in a different world as sports fans. It's not like it was when I was growing up, and certainly when my dad's and granddad's generation grew up. And obviously, it's going to be different. But I think we've lost some of the things about being sports fans that make sports enjoyable. So, over the next few months, leading into the summertime, I'm gonna try and do a series. If I'm gonna record less often and miss current events anyway, then I should focus more on big picture things. And that's something I'm going to do starting in season 8 and throughout this spring. So today is all about sports retail and sports merchandise and how it has completely been killed. Okay. And one of the one of the reasons it's been completely killed is because the leagues and the sports entities have forgotten that this country is made up of not just the cities where their teams play, but it's made up of rural areas where people rely on their local news and their local channels and their local stores when they to get access to sports. And what I mean by access is not just like literally watching it on TV, although that's a part of it and that's a subject that we'll get to later on. Um, but I mean like access to, I'm a Red Sox fan. Where can I go to buy Red Sox gear? I'm a Milwaukee Bucks fan. Where can I go to buy Milwaukee Bucks gear or a Giannis jersey? Heck, I'm an Inter Miami fan. I like Leo Messi. Where can I go to get that? Well, that's gotten a little bit easier, strangely. And so I want to tackle that issue today. And I want to look at it through the prism of, look, it's 2026. Sports has changed a lot in the last 20 years. Sports retail has been killed in the last 20 years. It's been killed. And I don't use that term lightly. Sports retail has been butchered since 2006. And I use 2006 not just because it's 20 years ago, but because I was born in the mid 90s. And if you were born in that time period like I was, then the mid 2000s was the golden age of sports. It was. We were very lucky. I was even luckier in New England having all the teams be strong at that time for the most part. But in the mid 2000s, and what I mean by the mid 2000s is literally the OOs, like that decade from 2000 to 2009. In the middle of that decade, the NHL, yes, was coming out of a lockout, but you had Major League Baseball as talented as it had ever been to that point, and consistently popular despite the steroid era. Because December 2006 or 2007, I can't remember, you had the Mitchell report. Then you obviously had a lot of suspensions throughout that time, but baseball was still really popular. The NBA, you had the pinnacle of Kobe and Tim Duncan and that whole thing. You had the rise of LeBron. Obviously, in the NFL, you had the Patriots dynasty and the undefeated season. Like the mid 2000s were dominated by sports, and you had sports on television. You had NBC had taken over the NHL media rights. You had ABC and ESPN had just gotten back into Monday Night Football. Sports was at a great spot. And if you were a kid like I was, most mom and pop stores who that sold sporting goods sold licensed memorabilia. They sold licensed apparel. And it was a great time to grow up because the access by which you could be a sports fan was not just about, can I watch it on TV? It was about, can I get access to buying the merchandise and being a sports fan? Because part of being a sports fan, it's more than just going to the games, watching it on TV. It's buying the merch and it's feeling like you're a part of the team. That's why so many people say we. I would argue more than anything, sports retail is incredibly important because when you are a sports fan and your favorite players, like there's not a single player left on the Boston Red Sox from the 2007 World Series championship. I mean, the closest you have is Alex Cora and um, Jason Varitek are on the coaching staff. But like the reason I'm still a Red Sox fan is because I fell in love with the team. And the laundry, it's like the Seinfeld joke, stays the same. The what you wear, the hats, the jerseys, the t-shirts, whatever, that is how you stay connected to a sports fan or to a sports team because your sweatshirt might last you 10 years, even though your favorite player at the time might be gone in free agency by then. So looking back at 2006, sports retail was defined by competition and local presence. If you lived in New England like I did, you had Olympia Sports. You might have had another local store. I can really only speak to Maine, but you had places where didn't matter. I mean, there were Olympia Sports locations in towns that aren't that big. Near where I grew up, Belfast, Maine, 6,000 people, Olympia Sports. You know what I mean? Like Gorham, Maine, maybe 10, 12,000 people live in Gorham. They had Olympia Sports. They were a college town. Oxford, Norway region of Maine, small. Yeah, but they catered to a lot of towns. They had Olympia Sports. Rockland, Maine, Olympia Sports. Ellsworth, Maine, Olympia Sports. You had Olympia Sports in malls. Okay, that's just a big part of it too. Malls. You had mall locations, places like Modell's, um, Champs, all kinds of sporting goods. Lids, back when Lids, I mean, Lids still exists, but it's been monopolized online by fanatics. There are there are still some places that do this. Like I got this hat at Dick's Sporting Goods, but Dick's Sporting Goods, those are limited to big cities or suburbs. And a lot of the country, it's really hard to find it. You're a good half hour or more drive from a place like that, or you're maybe an hour or more, maybe 2 hours, depending on what state you live in. So malls were a huge part in the mid 2000s of how sports fans got their gear. Whether it was a place like I just mentioned, or it could have been a stand in the middle of the mall that sold caps only. There's a few places like this. Like I know in Maine, the old Olympia Sports at the main mall turned into some random jersey store, but it doesn't feel local. It doesn't feel tailored. It feels like it's just a bunch of stuff thrown on a shelf. The Olympia Sports used to be able to go in there, get a baseball glove, get a baseball mitt or baseball pants if you were a baseball player. Maybe if you were playing football, you could pick up football cleats. And in the back of the store, they had licensed merchandise for your team. So it was a one-stop shop if you played sports and you were able to um buy buy merchandise that way. Similarly, like there was price stability. Like a high quality jersey at that time for an adult was probably somewhere between 80 and $100. I mean, really, like a high quality jersey. And it the supply was distributed through all these retailers. Sports Authority, who has gone out of business. Um, you had obviously Dick's, who I talked about, all the mom and pops. Um, you had the team pro shops for each of the teams. Like there was a lot of places, even even um even stores like Rite Aid and Walgreens sometimes carried uh licensed sports apparel. Um and what I mean by license is that it's for those of you who don't know, like it's official gear, it's not knockoffs. Um and you also had, when there was a brick and mortar presence, sales and clearance racks where you could actually tell the quality of the sale or clearance item before you purchased it. Now, you online, sometimes I wonder, like, is the reason it's on sale is because the quality is bad? You don't know because you can't see it. All right, so that existed throughout much of the 2000s and whatever time period before. But as we got into the 2010s, we started to see a pivot towards digital. And this is when like you you'd realize that a Olympia Sports had closed suddenly, or that, I talked about Sports Authority, they went out of business. It became increasingly hard to compete with Amazon and other retailers online. And with the rise of smartphones, led the understanding of retailers that um, they could cut costs by focusing online. And it also led sports leagues to understand this as well. And so the pivot of sports retail of licensed apparel moved from, hey, we're selling it at local mom and pops to and brick and mortar mall stores to we're selling it online. Um, and the single worst thing to happen in sports retail in the history of the industry happened in the mid 2010s as well. And that was a company called Fanatics. Okay. Those of you who know me personally know that I have a minor vendetta against Fanatics. Okay. I think Fanatics is the worst thing to happen to sports retail in the history of the industry. You might ask, why is that, Will? Why is it the worst thing? Why is Fanatics the worst thing to happen to sports retail? And the reason why is, when you're playing Monopoly and you pass go and you collected $200 and you're feeling good about yourself, and then you land on your brother or your sister or your dad or your wife or your cousin's property line, and not only do they own the railroad, but they own the properties that go with it, and they've got hotels on there, and they've owned the factories, and suddenly you're bankrupt, and all that money that you had slid under the your side of the board has been handed over to your sister-in-law or whatever. That is what Fanatics is. Because Fanatics started out as a great idea. Hey, we're gonna sell online sports apparel for licensed teams. It's gonna be a one-stop shop for those of you who want to shop online. Like if you lived in Texas, but we're a transplant and we're actually like a Yankee fan, like you could still shop online and you could get the gear for your team. Kind of like NFL Sunday Ticket, but for sports fans who wanted to buy gear. Sounds like a good idea. Here's the problem. They became the e-commerce engine for Major League Baseball and the National Football League. They began handling the back end of the league websites, right? So back in the day, you might remember when e-commerce started with sports retail, it was NFLshop.com, MLBshop.com, NHLshop.com, and there used to be this great music online, and they tell you all these great things you could buy, and they ran their own sites. And they were reliable because they had to be, because they had wholesale accounts with New Era, with Nike, with Reebok, with Adidas, with all the manufacturers. And it was, hey, we got to work with them and keep our product to a good standard be because we're dealing with a bunch of different companies, and we have to stay competitive on price because the pro shops for each of the teams also had their own online stores. Some of them still do. Like the Bruins one is a great place to buy Bruins and Celtics stuff. I would never buy Bruins or Celtics things from Fanatics. I would always, if I was buying online, I would always buy them from Boston Pro Shop if I was buying a jersey. So suddenly, Fanatics has taken over the back end and the fulfillment for Major League Baseball and the National Hockey League, the NFL. And they essentially became the digital gatekeeper for all things licensed apparel. And if that wasn't bad enough, they became the manufacturer of a lot of licensed retail. So not only were they were the judge, they were the juror. Fanatics became the checkout button, the factory, and the digital gatekeeper. They were fulfilling your order, they were manufacturing your product, and they were signing deals with all the leagues and teams to run the pro shop stores online, or at least most of them. Fanatics became a monopoly in the mid to late 2010s. And the problem is it got worse. It got worse because of the death of the middleman. The Sports Authority crashed. Olympia Sports crashed. A lot of these other stores shrunk their physical footprint, sending most people online. They also got in bed with Nike, who Nike became the dominant on-field supplier. They supply uniforms for the NBA. They supply uniforms for Major League Baseball. They supply uniforms for the NFL. And NHL, as of 2023, is distributed their uniforms by Fanatics and made by Fanatics. Beforehand, you had the NFL on Reebok, You had Major League Baseball had Majestic. Remember them? You had the National Hockey League did Reebok as well. Sometimes if you were in Canada, they did CCM. And then the NBA had Adidas. And then for a little bit, the NHL did Adidas as well. And then New Era, of course, did all of the on-field caps. And they still do for Major League Baseball. But a lot of that is distributed by Fanatics. Now, obviously, New Era, 47 brand Nike, they have their own sites. Nike doesn't sell a lot of licensed merch on their sites, but uh, uh, New Era and 47 certainly do. And those are good companies. I would also recommend going and shopping there instead of Fanatics. Um, and and this really took off in the mid to late 2010s. And in the last 5 years, post pandemic, it has gotten it has gotten way out of hand. Have you ever stopped to wonder why your teams are always doing a City Connect jersey or a Winter Classic Stadium Series jersey or a rivalry series? Obviously, at first glance, you say, "Oh, they're looking to make a quick buck and sell some merchandise." Of course, they're a business. But have you ever wondered that it's to create artificial demand? That's why they do it. They're creating artificial demand for a product. What I mean by that is they don't make enough. They don't make enough, and they don't make enough on purpose. There are people that would sell, or sorry, that would buy. There are people that would buy a lot of these things. A lot of them I like. I'm wearing the City Connect hat for the Red Sox right now. I bought it from Dick's because I can't afford to buy it from Fanatics. And by the way, even if I wanted to buy it on Fanatics, it's not there because they create artificial demand, right? There's a reason why like Dick's and Rally House and uh, Modell's and all these other sporting goods retailers ran out of stock because Fanatics doesn't supply them with enough. And by the way, Fanatics doesn't supply itself with enough either, working with Nike. So that when you go to buy the City Connect jersey in Major League Baseball, or you go to buy the rivalry jersey in the NFL, you buy a Winter Classic jersey in the NHL, or you go to the NBA and you do I think they do City Connect as well. Um, they don't make enough because if they can create artificial demand by not making enough supply and then having you think that it's more popular than it is, um, they can raise the price on you. They can keep raising the price on you. They the Red Sox have been wearing the yellow jerseys for 5 years. The cost has only gone up. Why is that? Because they create artificial demand for them. They don't make enough. And then everybody sees them and everybody falls in love with them. And we get accustomed to that being part of the uniform. And we say, I want to treat that one the same way we treat the white or the gray jersey. Well, they can't. You can't because they don't make enough. And by the way, they don't make enough for all the players that you want to wear. So if your favorite player isn't one of the two or three that they've identified, you have to pay more. You have to for custom. And then they do that on purpose. It's not just to sell merchandise. It's to it's to drive up the price of the already existing merchandise. Like the um when they bring out the City Connect for all these teams, immediately there's a spike. Oh my God, I love them. They sell out immediately. Oh, okay, well they're popular. People are gonna buy them. No, they keep you waiting on bated breath, and I say this out of experience. I've been wanting one of the green jerseys for almost a year now. Can't buy them. You can't buy them anywhere. And they make you wait on bated breath and wait for Fanatics to post them. They in drop culture is what this is, has become a huge part of sports. Do you remember the days when your team would win the championship? And I mean, it happened a lot around here. You would go to Olympia Sports and they would have, this is how many we've got. I remember waiting for the Bruins um, hats to get shipped when they won the Stanley Cup in 2011. It took a month to get to my house. And that was in the old model. It's worse now because once it's sold, it's gone. NHLshop.com back then restocked. That's how I ended up getting it a month later. Now they sell out of your championship merchandise, you're SOL. And they don't care. So Fanatics is no longer just a store, like I said, as of now. They're the manufacturer, the wholesaler, the retailer. They own the rights to the NFL, MLB, NHL, etc. They own the factories and they own the checkout button. That's what we're living in right now. Secondary brands are focusing on lifestyle wear. I talked about 47 brand and New Era. A lot of that now, it's not the on-field kind of stuff. It's the streetwear, it's the retro. They're making everything retro or vintage. Um, and they bring the whole fashion side of the industry with them, right? So if you're another smaller licensed retailer of sports, pro sports apparel, and it's the same in college too, by the way, they're gonna bring you with them, right? That's why you've seen like Homage and Home Field and Streaker Sports and all these other great brands lean into vintage because that's where the non on-field jersey component is heading. And you see the prices on some of those sites, they're great products. We're talking $35, $40 for a t-shirt. We're talking $100 or more for a jacket or a hoodie. Usually, sometimes you might be lucky to get a hoodie for $75. They brought the whole industry with them. You also have premium tiers. Fanatics, you go online. Do you want the replica jersey for the NFL? That's $129.99 with heat pressed as opposed to stitched name and number? Or do you want the one that's a better quality? Because if you do, that's $250. There's no stitched jerseys anymore. The lettering on a baseball jersey might be stitched, but the names and numbers, they're all template heat press for the most part. Um, and especially in the NFL. If baseball, they'll still probably hockey as well. You'll see the nameplate sewn on, and the nameplate will have embroidered um, name and number. But in the NFL, it's all just vinyl crap, is what it is. So quality. Fanatics doesn't have to produce good quality because when you're a monopoly, there's no competitor. And that's where we live. Counterfeits have emerged as a result. Because if you are like me and you don't want to shell out $300 for a jersey, you're going to look on eBay or Poshmark or Depop or Facebook Marketplace. And what you're going to get as a result is a lot of people grifting because nothing causes a grift more than priced out consumers who think that they might be getting a better deal. And last but not least, we have a complete breakdown of trust in the industry. Used to be you showed up at your local mom and pop store, got a jersey, you could feel it before you bought it. Now you buy a jersey from Fanatics, they send you one with the wrong name or the wrong number or the wrong team. You saw that viral video of the Seahawks hat that had the Patriots logo on the back for the Super Bowl. There's not a lot of accountability because Fanatics will say, "Oh, it's non-returnable, it's a custom item," or "Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, can't help you there. It's gonna be 7 to 8 business days for you to get your refund, and you're gonna have to pay for return shipping, stuff like that." Sometimes they make it right. I'll give them a hand. One time I bought a jersey from Fanatics, and I was able to get them to change the shipping address on the order. Sometimes they help you out, but it's a complete breakdown of trust. The consumer has lost confidence, not just in Fanatics, but in the whole industry. So I say this as a warning, right? If fans can't even get licensed apparel from a trustworthy brand without fear of bad quality, bad customer service, price gouging, artificial demand, etc., then how do we feel about streaming services, right? How do we feel about ticket prices? How do we feel about, I don't know, gambling ads? Like the entire industry has just gone in a direction that is leaving the fans behind. They're leaving middle class fans behind. And retail is just the tip of the iceberg. It's the lowest barrier to entry for a sports fan is because if you can't afford to go to a game, maybe you can afford to buy a hat. And I would think that these leagues would give at least an iota of care about this problem because they know that that's how their young fans get introduced to the game. But again, are they really the real customer anymore? Or are the real customers the advertisers, the gambling companies, the corporate interests who buy a lot of the season tickets? I'm not convinced, or the streaming subscribers that are paying for Peacock Premium or Paramount Plus or whatever it is, or NFL Sunday Ticket or NFL Red Zone or you name it, ESPN Plus. Are the subscribers the new customer? Who is the customer? Because if the customer is really the fan and they're one and the same, then depriving fans of good access, and I'm a capitalist, depriving them competition is a huge loss. It's a huge loss. And I think my moral of the story is if you could just go back to this this closing paragraph, when you think about it and you close your eyes at night, and hopefully you're not too insomniatic thinking about this, but I'm just going to close with this paragraph. Remember when walking into a local sporting goods store meant choosing between five different brands, feeling the heavy duty stitching of a jersey that cost $75 or maybe a little bit more, and actually finding your size on the shelf? Remember that? That world is gone. Over the last 20 years, the sports retail landscape has shifted from a competitive neighborhood marketplace into a consolidated digital monopoly. What was once an era of local variety as recently as 2006 gave way to the digital pivot in the mid 2010s and led us to today's vertical reality, where a single giant controls the design, the factory, and the storefront. We have traded the stitched quality for heat pressed vinyl and reliable local access with friends and neighbors for artificial scarcity and $300 quote unquote authentic price tags. As the connection between the fan and the uniform becomes a luxury transaction dictated by algorithms, monopolies, and drops, we have to ask ourselves, in the pursuit of corporate efficiency, has the sports world priced out the average fan? My answer to that question, ladies and gentlemen, is yes. And so when I go through this series the next few months and we discuss some of the big issues like streaming, like gambling, like retail, I'm going to leave no stone unturned. I've had enough of just sitting back and just letting this happen, letting this go and not talking about it. I think a lot of my listeners, I think you feel the same way. I'm passionate about it, clearly. So that's going to do it for today's episode. But just know that going forward, that's going to be part of the series. We're going to tackle issues in sports. We're going to go all over the place. It's not just going to be on the business and commercial side. I hope you stay along for a ride, something I've wanted to do for a long time. As always, you can shop wherever, or jeez, you can listen wherever, gosh, wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, and Google Stitcher. You can like us on social media on Facebook and follow us on Instagram at HomefieldPod and Twitter as well. We have our own merch, not overpriced. Try to stay. No, I will never price something on that website more than $75. I just don't believe in it unless the quality wows me away and but I don't think I'm gonna do that. But if you don't want to buy our fan apparel, it's not licensed. It's mostly just home field advantage, odd man rush stuff. You can do that sportland.square.site and you get 20% off for using the promo code HOMEFIELD as a listener. That's part of my mission. It's right there on the website. I want this stuff to become more affordable and I want it to become more transparent. Um, so that's what we're doing there. But I hope you enjoyed the pod. Hope you had a good rest of your week. Um, Enjoy March Madness as it comes up. Enjoy the World Baseball Classic. It's been fun. We'll have a lot to talk about later on in the week or in the months ahead. But until then, my name is Will Highland. You have been listening to a special episode of Home Field Advantage.